Yeah, I really think that's complementing the colors, and it's, well, obviously it's in the eye of the beholder. We got a little bit of a ratty edge here that I want to touch up, and a couple other little spots up here. There's a little spot that just isn't up to the level I want, so it's real easy. I just back mask the whole thing again, put some black in the airbrush, redo that edge, and then put another coat of clear on top of it, and then hope that see, what happens is by breaking the tape edge, the reason these things happen is there's just too much paint. By the time we seal this with clear and put several coats, the edge gets thick, and that's what tends to happen to any paint edge if you build it up too thick. But by moving the tape now, we've created a brand new edge right on it, and I hope that'll give us a nicer edge. Now I hope this is going to be a very small touch-up. I'm going to just try to touch up that edge. Again, starting on the tape and then working my way down into the edge, not starting on the part. And trying not to hit the trigger. See, what I'll do is take this off the part and then let go, because a lot of times it'll spit right at the end. And this little spot right at the top I know is going to be a pain. So I can hold it this way and do it. Now, of course, this is one thing. I'll let this dry, and I'm only trying to go around the whole part now to make sure it blends and it looks the same. And it's the very edge when it's black that really makes it jump out. I remember how happy D. Rice was when he painted his canopy, and he looked at the video, and when I went to Texas, I saw the plane, I said, "You bum, you owe me money." Okay, now, I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, well, hoping it's our lucky day. We'll find out. Now that's got to dry a little bit. We'll let it dry. And I'll take it and just shoot a thin coat of clear on top of it, and then that'll have to sit overnight. Now the real test is going to be when we take this out in the sunlight. Just get a thin coat of clear on this, and again, it's going to have to dry overnight. That's the whole. And we'll see how that looks when that dries up. Now, today's mail. This is what we've been waiting for. This is from Dave Midgley. This is all the decal stuff. Now, Dave and Rick Campbell have been experimenting with decals, and keep in mind what we're trying to do is just consolidate all the information we can into a whatever. Okay, here it is. Deluxe finishing set. Water slide decal paper, and I'm assuming he printed out the stuff that we're looking for here for our tests. Instructions. Again, the thing that Dave has is a very, very expensive printer because his business can warrant expending the money for that type of a thing. So let's see if there's anything else in here. I don't think so. Okay. So the first thing I'll do is get myself a cup of coffee, read the directions. Now let's see if we can get the information on here. www.lasertran.com. Telephone number. This is always important stuff for somebody that wants to email. Okay, so anyway, that's, I'm going to read this. Now these look like they come from Europe, so there may be some things that we need to look at. Always a good idea. Nice cup, good excuse to have a cup of coffee anyway. But I'll get a cup of coffee going and read this. And it looks like we have a real nice supply of these, all of the little letters and everything that we're going to need to do our next phase of the test. Little Ferrari stickers. Somehow I picture the ones that are left over winding up on toolboxes and whatever. Oh, these are the nice. These are nice. Ooh. And they're kind of gray. Now, the interesting thing is going to be to see if the red bleeds through. And if it doesn't, oh boy, are we lucky. All right. So, we have this much of it. And this is the, I guess, the paper that they used. Now this is their Micromark Deluxe Clear Gloss, Clear Satin, Clear Flat, Decal Setting Solution, Softening Solution. I guess we'll read the coffee is brewing as we speak. Ooh, look at this. More Ferrari stuff. Okay, and each bottle looks like it's labeled. Again, you might, if anybody's really interested in this, you can check with the company or just check with Dave. Or I assume in a week from now we'll know. Liquid decal film. Ooh, just what I want to see. Instructions. Okay, so we have the whole deluxe kit here. I'm going to leave all this, and I guess each one is marked, labeled. Now I just spent a good 15 minutes reading these directions, so I familiarize myself with all the steps. And before I even try to do anything on a model, the first thing I want to do, I have those little cassette cases, because here the decision I have to make is if I'm going to leave the wing in silver. That's one choice. The other choice I have is I want to see if I'm going to wind up at the end of this or during this, if I'm going to be able to paint the wing red. And today it's raining outside, so there's no chance I'm going to paint anything today outside. I need to wait, even if I'm going to do the red, for at least a day with low humidity, and that may be coming up. But it'll give me, what it's going to do, it's going to force me to have extra time to do my little experiments. And I need to start right now. This is a 4-step process. Step 1, step 2, and they're using totally different materials. They're using the materials actually that they give you. Well, of course we want to try these materials, but I also, at the same time I'm doing this, I want to run the same test, but instead of using their clear gloss, I'm going to use Brodak Dope. Because the idea is when I laminate in different materials, as the sun heats and cools and things move and you're flying and there's G-forces, I'm just picturing that the most reliable system would be if all the materials are the same. They all shrink the same, they all compress the same. So what I'm going to do is do one test, and I'll do them parallel. I'll do test 1, exactly what they say to do. Test 2, my little improvised thing. And then obviously at some point in time make a decision how I'm going to actually do the model. But thanks to Dave, we have plenty of choices now. And what's more important, ooh, doesn't that look good? Ooh, when the ice is finally melting off the pond and it's raining, that's the answer to good modeling right there. That and having some good friends that do the research on the internet for this stuff. So we have all the choices. So I have my next two test panels. I marked, this is going to be the one with the Brodack dope method. This is going to be using the Micromark products. And I'll go down the 4 steps. Step 1 is to, and I'm going to read it carefully and do exactly what they say, using the materials that they supply. Okay, one thing they're telling you, and this is something I assumed, is that they're best applied to a glossy surface. And they give you some material to make the surface that you're putting these on glossy. But in our case, I'm going to put it on our test, but I wouldn't want to do that. See, I wouldn't want to put non-Brodack products if I don't have to. If I have to, that's one thing. But if I don't have to, I'd like to eliminate all these products, and only for the reason that then I don't have any compatibility issues somewhere in the future. And if I do it step by step, I can see which ones I need, which ones I don't need. Now our test panel, I purposely made some of it real glossy, where it has a lot of paint on it, and some dull, like the finish we have on there now. We have an absolute minimum amount. And if I spray the wing red, I'm going to spray it with the, not the airbrush, the medium-sized spray gun, so I get a more laid out surface. See, an airbrush surface is really thin, and we could use that to our advantage. Or the other choice we would have is if we did an airbrush surface, we could just spray 1 coat of clear on top of that. So let me do the first part of this exactly the way they say on the directions, and this way we'll have a parallel test running at the same time. To make sure this test is totally valid, what does this say? Contains a chemical known in the state of California that causes... No kidding. Air causes cancer. Riding in a bus causes cancer. We're all gonna die. Okay, so this is the product they give you to make a clear, and I want to take a brand new brush. It's never had any other product on it. I have a suspicious feeling that this is some kind of like a clear nail polish type of product. Let's see. Now, the way I can tell, if I put this on, and what happens is, it starts melting the red. I start picking up the red, I know it's lacquer based. Well, apparently it's not, it's enamel based, it's not picking up any of the red. I'll make a big enough spot here. I can do my, well, I ought to do the whole panel. If we're going to do step 1, step 2, step 3, we may as well do exactly what they say. It scares me, and I know pretty much everybody that's ever had trouble with Brodack dope. Brodack dope was designed in the 20s, formulated, and George Anderson told me this over and over. Anytime anybody ever has a problem with it, there's another product in there that's a problem, because they made that product to paint real aircraft, and they couldn't make it. They can't make it that it doesn't work. You know, the government really wouldn't be buying thousands, and they wouldn't be in business. That's the other part. So anyway, having said that, now they tell you to let this dry overnight, but we'll see when it dries. That leaves a gloss, and that's the first step they tell you on this part of the test. Now here's a little trick you can do when you're doing tests, and I remember from my my days of doing the initial tests with Brodack dope. George Anderson would take every batch and put a label on it. Now in this case, I don't need every batch, but I want to know that for the rest of this test, I'm using this brush for this product. Now, I'm not sure, it says this is non-toxic. Now, how can it be non-toxic and cause cancer in California? Does that mean it doesn't cause cancer in Nevada? Water-based acrylic hobby paint film. See, now I'm skeptical, and it's only from a lifetime of playing with chemicals and having a house full of toxic stuff. I'm always skeptical about mixing water base with no water base. That always gets to be a problem. I was refinishing a floor in one of my rental properties one time with this material that said, absolutely no problem, water-based, will go over anything. Yeah, and it didn't. They lied. So since that day, I've been kind of skeptical, but I know I'm wrong, because I know, the reason I know I'm wrong is people like Bob Brookins, people that are professional painters, they've already got water-based paint that works as good or better than, you know, the materials that we normally associate, aircraft paint and things like that, Imrons, epoxies. So I know there are water-based products that work, but now to find out the compatibility issue, and boy, it's a lot easier refinishing one of these DVD covers than refinishing the Testarossa wing. Now I'm just curious how long this is going to take to dry. It's absolutely compatible at this point. It looks like in a half hour or so here, it's even in the spot where it's very thick, it's dried. Anyway, we want to do this exactly as the directions say. I've learned that lesson the hard way. Okay, the next product we have to deal with is called Decal Setting Solution, and I assume this is the equivalent of other brands' Solvaset. Now, again, my brush for this product is going to have a little piece of blue tape. Shake it up, I don't know if that's necessary. Read the directions. That is pretty specific about another tip, and I was not aware of this. Now, here's the things you can learn. Brush setting solution. Oh, this is to remove decals. We may need to do that at some point in time. Okay, so we have next part of the test. We have our little test. Now, it could be that we're not doing as well as we should have, because this didn't dry overnight, but I really don't want to spend, you know, any longer than I have to figure this out. So step one, this is what they tell you to do, and we'll find out. And by the way, anybody that's a real model railroader where you build kits, and I bet Gerald Champ probably is going to know about this real soon. Okay, it seems like this doesn't want to sit down the way it should, but hey, it's okay. Smells like vinegar, in fact. This part of it smells like vinegar. Now, they tell you to dip the decal in the water for 1 minute. Dip it in and then let it sit for 1 minute, not to leave it in the water for a minute. That might be a significant tip, because they don't want to dissolve the glue. Maybe you could use vinegar. You know, a lot of times they sell you a jar of vinegar and charge you $15 for it. Now, doing exactly what they say, I actually timed it. I dipped this in to the water. Dip it, but don't leave it sitting there. And I'm going to wait a minute, and then this decal should release. Now, I understand the chemistry here. If this sits in the water, it might dissolve too much of the what amounts to be the glue. And I want to just press this very gently with my hand, ever so gently. Oh, just touch it. There we go. Okay, now we got to get our little test piece. Now that we know that's working. Get our brush for this product. I remember doing this to HO trains years ago and being so proud of my handiwork that I made these little buildings and little different things for the train layout. Okay, so now you have, whoops, got to make a bigger area. Didn't realize this decal was this big. And boy, if this proves to be good technology a year from now, when I pick out either a paint job for a traditional model or you think of the possibilities when you can do this kind of work. Wow. Now normally we would have trimmed off the edge. I didn't trim it because I wanted to see if that became totally clear or not. Now I can see bleed through here is absolutely a problem. Let's just do what they say. Whoops. Now this material, in essence, softens the decal and lets it work its way down into every little nook and cranny. See, now if we were doing this over the fuselage, we'd have a red horse, and I don't think this would work unless I back painted the little area yellow or white or something. White would probably be the best choice. But again, we're going to learn. Okay, that's pretty. I can feel it getting soft here where my finger was touching it. So now they tell you can push it into position and use the brush. I'm gonna put the lid on this. It smells like vinegar. Whew. It smells like I'm cooking here or something. Ooh, that really softened it up nice. Okay, so doing just what they say. And the only issue here right now is the bleed through. Bleed through is a problem. You can see that already. I'm going to let this dry. Okay, a tip they're telling you here is once this dries, you can keep going over it with the decal softening solution as many times as you want. Well, I think our areas are relatively flat. We probably won't have to do that, but I can see the yellow has almost disappeared. That's already really an issue. So what I'm going to do for now is just put this away and start the Brodac dope test part of this. Now just one little item, as I reread this, as I'm ending this part of the test, I wanted to make sure I had the setting solution and the decal softening solution. Now what this is used for is when you have a model train and there are rivets on a tender or a boxcar and you want the decal to roll around those rivets, and obviously there may be parts, say we wanted to put a decal that went around the strakes. This is what we'd need. But I think for what we're doing right now, we can just let it lay flat. And that's what I thought. Then I went and reread the directions, and I had already read this 3 times, and it said what this does, it helps it look like the decal is printed right on the model. So we will give this a shot. And this is going to go over the course of a couple of days, but I don't want to do the model and then come back and say, why didn't I take my time, or why didn't I read it? And again, the little tape, having clean brushes for everything, this gives me a fair way of testing. Not that there's ever a fair way other than doing a model, and if it comes out great, great. And the big thing is if we learn something that's a big thing, don't step in this hole, or don't try this at home, or don't drink this. I'm surprised they don't have this on these jars. Don't drink this, or don't feed it to the cat or something. What's important here is to just find out how to get from point A to point B and get rid of all the landmines, all the things that could make this a problem. And here's one of the things I dream about. One of the possibilities for next year's plane is another Typhoon, because we already have the molds made. In fact, we could use the molded wing and a molded body. It could be for all purposes an almost all composite plane with Richards 90. Problem with that is I have masked out so many roundels in my life, and I'm roundelled out. I mean, these roundels, you're looking at a lot of backmasking, and it's got to be so perfect. I bought expensive compasses. And then the second time I did them, I forgot how I did them. Luckily, I had it on video for the Seafire. And then doing this one on an I-beam. Now, what that solution would be great for, if we had a big giant decal, you wanted it to conform to this I-beam wing, I think that's the material you would have to use. So we want to know about this stuff, even if we're not using it on the plane we're building right now. This will be interesting to see. Now, what I realized is Dave had printed this on clear paper instead of white paper, so we don't have a white background. We need to have a white background, so I'm going to redo the test on both of them with some of the paper that has a white background. Now, what I'm just getting ahead of myself here. Need more coffee. But as these dry now what I'll do is I'll cut some out of the paper that has a white background. See, the paper that's clear, the decal paper that's clear, doesn't have the white backing. So, and that's what we're really interested in, is the white backing. Now these were done with the white back paper. Anyway, so we've accumulated quite a bit of data already. The first thing we need to know that for our purposes, we need to have white back paper. That's number one. And I need to, you know what I can do? I can figure out if Dave did this. I can take and cut a little piece of this paper off, since I don't need the corner of the paper. And this will tell me if this is clear paper or do my own little test. Okay, so what I've discovered here is let's look at the difference. Don't know if there even is a difference. This is the clear. This is the paper that's clear. And that's what happens, why it bleeds through. Unless, and I don't know because I'm going to have to check this out, unless the paper that Rich Oliver used is different. We're comparing apples and oranges here is what's happening. Now, as this dried, I can see some of the color coming back, but I wanted it to be a totally fair test. And what's happening is the stuff we originally had on the first day of testing is done on white paper or semi-opaque paper. The stuff Dave has, and maybe it's the same paper, I don't know, but it's kind of clear paper, so the background bleeds right through. So I need to, before I go on with the next part of this test, make sure that we have the same paper on everything. Or maybe this is the right paper and it just needs to dry. Now I have to see how that's going to work out. I did a little test with the corner here, and that's why can you imagine if you're trying to do this with nobody's helping? It's you'd make yourself crazy. See, this is starting to come where it's turning white again. So let's see, and it'll be interesting to see if this works out the way I think it will, but maybe it's just the fact that this stuff, when it dries, it's easy. Yeah, it seems like that's the case. But anyway, interesting little part of it that I didn't know about. But that's the whole point of doing a test. Imagine doing this on your model and everything disappears and you can't figure anything out. Oh. But see, the problem is these are already dried. And this, I know, doubling it up, or in our case, we'll just paint that white. But a lot of little stuff here we have to figure out before we move on to the next part of the test. But again, we've got a lot more information now than we had even a half an hour ago. As we see how this now, as this is drying, it looks like this is going to become white again. Well, yeah, okay, that'd be nice if the letters do that. But the thing is, with the big Testarossa letters, I don't have an extra letter. I only have what I have. So I need to know this. I need to talk to Dave, and maybe even at the risk of talking to Rich Oliver and getting some more information, because the decals Rich had, and they may be two totally different things. These decals didn't go opaque right away. But the problem, again, the problem is this is not printed white, it's turning white. Anyway, I guess that's what we hope we can learn from doing all these experiments. Okay, spent quite a bit of time, embarrassing amount of time. See, I'm supposed to be reading all these directions, not realizing that these are the ones from Rich Oliver. These are laser, and that they're different than the ones Dave has sent. And I hope I got this right. Yes, these were made on Rich Oliver's printer. Now the problem with a laser printer is it really can't print white. So what Rich does is run it on white paper with a white paper. Okay, so that's the difference. Now we're starting to get the database sorted out. Now, when talking to Richard, this is his laser. These are the first days, and the ones that are on our test plane are laser. Now, these are the ones Rich Oliver uses, but the ones Dave sent, they're done with an inkjet. And I got to make sure I got this right. The inkjet is the expensive printer. It's a $1,000 printer, and you can get that done at Kinko's if you put the file on a disk. So again, here we have the solution here, if that's the right word, was just to use double decals, and that would have worked fine. Double decal everything up, and that would have been no problem. And Rich, when I talked to RO, the funny thing was, he had never thought of putting two sets of decals on. Well, okay, that's why we work together and why we do why I enjoy doing these tests. A more educated person, a person with a master's degree, would have called up the company and researched it out and went on the internet. But a guy that's a farmer, he digs a hole, plants a seed, and see what grows. So I guess I'm a farmer, I don't know. Anyway, we are really learning and really fine-tuning this now, and I'm just in the nick of time, too. Okay, so now we have a more defined... Now what's happened is, Dave's stuff, remember it just disappeared? Well, as the decal dried, I'm touching this, it's pretty dry right now. As it dried, once I feel this is totally dry, I'm going to try to spray some Brodac dope on top of that. That's going to be the next part of the test. And of course, this is the one that has the white, not exactly white like you would want to make a, yeah, but it's certainly good enough. So what I think the possibility is here, from looking at this, I think we're going to be able to use the ones Dave made, the laser letters. I think we're going to be able to do them right over red. But again, what I'm going to do now, the next part of this test, because I want to report back to Dave before the day's over, I'll take the Micromark and put their solution on top of it, their clear solution, and the Brodac dope test. I'll put Brodac dope on this, and then we'll come back to it and see if it deteriorated, got better, got worse. But at least now we know, and thanks to Rich Oliver, this is now information that both Dave and I, at least we can share. Put it right in the decal box. The paper that inkjet printers print on, you can print inkjet or laser. The laser printer paper prints laser only. Now if that changes, I'll try to get an update in there, but that's the information we have right now. And I'm going to go and put the Micromark stuff on this one, put Brodac dope on this one, and then see what we got. Now the other thing worth noting, when you use the laser method, and this is the one that uses the expensive printer or Kinko's, Rich said you didn't have to worry about coating these like you do with the inkjet ones, because the inkjet ones, the water attacks the ink. The laser ones, and I've tested it already, just cut one out, put it in the water, comes right off, no problem at all. So there's the disadvantages, advantages and disadvantages, that most people don't have an expensive laser printer, most people, but you could always go to Kinko's, put the file for your whatever it is, take it down to Kinko's, and almost everybody that has a computer has the program to make these sheets. It's just a question of printing them, or in the case of if you have a laser printer at work, or if you have a friend that has one. That adds a lot of choices. Anyway, we're going to do our spray test. The rain has stopped, and just see how this is going to dry out, because tomorrow we're hoping we're going to be able to paint the wing. Okay, now the next step on this, if I'm going by is the decal softening solution. And what this is supposed to do is allow the decal to soften and conform to various little irregularities. Now this would be really necessary, say on an open bay wing, Nobler wing. And we'll put this here. This has to go on, and it makes the decal disappear again. This disappearing and coming back is kind of eerie. But again, that's what makes sharing this information worthwhile, because only one person has to really run around a block and figure out where the shortcut is. Okay, so that's... Now we're going to let this dry. This is the Micromark. This ends, except for the clear that you would put on top of this, the clear, and obviously we're not going to use their clear. I marked this set of brushes and things. Now, this had me worried, but I have a feeling that when this product dries, the color is going to come back. So that would be a reason not to get eerie about it. Now, I'm thinking I'm going to go outside and spray some clear on this, that this is going to come back also as soon as the Brodac dope dries. So this will be Brodac, one coat of Brodac dope. We'll see what if it disappears and comes back. See what's funny? As soon as you wet these down, it seems like they disappear. But that's only the lasers that do that. The inkjets don't do that. The inkjets don't have this tendency to disappear and come back. Okay, so again, disappeared as I thought it would. the Brodack dope made it disappear. Now this is important that I do this test, because what if, here's the possibilities, what if this doesn't revert to being white? Then everything we learned today is, well, again, we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to have to make some decision, because by the end of this day I would like to know if I'm going to be able to use these products on the silver wing and have to backmask them, or if the colors come back, then I'll have to see, well, or I'll have to do a little test on a fuselage. See, I could test this on a fuselage. Maybe I'll even do that. And because I have this material, it'll take the decals off if it doesn't work. So more experiments, more testing. We'll come back to this when it's dry. Okay, the next part of the test. The Micromark stuff dried up. And you can see the difference in the color. We've lost some of the color because of the bleed through. But what I want to try is, and you can see the difference in the color, what I want to try, now I haven't put on the clear yet. I want to put on, I'm going to wet up another decal, put the decal solution and put one right on top of the other, just to see if it'll brighten the color up. Again, this is only necessary when you're going over, see it's a little on the pink side. We're going to find out though. Now we're basically going to repeat with the decal setting solution. We know exactly what to expect right now. But this stuff smells just like vinegar. And we watch the decal disappear. Now it was interesting to me that Rich Oliver hadn't tried. I thought he would already have tried doing exactly what we're doing here, duplicating these. Now what's nice about this, with this, so let me put some of this on here. When this solution's on here, you can really, with the brush, you can carefully line it up. Now see how it's like it's out of focus here? Now let's just see if this returns to a better color yellow, because we have an original one. That's the hair out of that brush. So you can move this even with your hand. I'm trying to do it with the brush, but little fine amounts, so you have nice crisp edges. So here it is after it's dry. Now the next thing, of course, is to put that softening solution on. I don't even know if we have to do that. Well, let's do exactly, well, maybe that's Dave calling back again with more info. Okay, now the softening solution is dry. The last step on this is I'm going to just, it's totally dry. I want to spray on a coat of Brodack Clear and see if it maintains the color or if it fades away. And that's the issue right now. Because as this fades, then the red comes through. So we have to come up with a solution for that. Let me see, let me go outside and shoot a little clear on this. Okay, and that's what happens when you spray on what amounts to be a regular coat of clear. It looks like that's disappearing, and it looks like it's interacting with the chemicals underneath it from the Micromark system, maybe the vinegar or whatever that is. So we're going to have to look at, well, that looks like a deal breaker now. See, that's looking like we got some chemical interaction there, so that's why we do the tests. Now the other test, the laser with the Brodack dope totally melted the the chemistry in it. So from looking at this, now that looks like maybe that's not going to be possible to do it that way. Even though they come back to white, the dope doesn't let them come back to white. So what happened is, from this experiment now with our lettering, we're basically at a decision point where we want to look at, is there going to be a way that we can get this to work? Now, and I'm just thinking, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, the only way this is going to work is if I paint that white first, or if I do that. Now I could do that. I can paint. Let's think how I can do this. I have that silver. See, I just want to do this for my own information now. I want to do the silver. Let me see how that works. Okay, so as I go back to square one with the laser stuff, this looks like, at least right now, this is more compatible. This is more compatible than the laser ones. See, so I'm wondering, and again, that's why we do the test, that maybe the best solution is going to be something similar to this. But what I wanted to test, because if I do these, see, what I could do is I could do the decals. I could do this type of laser decals on top of the silver, but then I'd have to backmask them. So this was my concern, is that when you put tape on here, well, I guess I'm wrong. Let me try some green tape, because if I can backmask it, let me try the green tape, is usually a little bit stickier. If I could put the lasers down, in fact, I'll try to pull it up. No, not pulling that up. So that's looking like it's narrowing down our choices too. But that's why we do the test. And that looks, well, that may be Dave on the other phone. So the next thing that we're going to find out, and I have to find this out from Elliott Scott. This is paper that Elliott Scott had sent to Dave, special paper that came from England. This is not this is not what I have that was in that envelope. So this is special paper. We're going to find out more about this. But what it looks like is that the laser paper, the dope and the paper, see, that's never gone away. That wrinkliness, that means there's or more than likely there's a chemical compatibility. The lacquer thinner is melting that. So what I decided to do, and just to try to learn something, what I'm going to try to do, go back to this. This is part of the Testarossa test lettering. I'm going to try to spray this without even putting it down as a decal. Spray a coat of Brodac dope on it and see if the dope is attacking this paper before we even lay it down. Now that's got a coat of Brodac dope on it. I'm going to let it dry. And what this will tell us is if the chemicals in the dope are attacking the paper, or if it doesn't look like they're attacking the ink. Well, we're going to know when that dries. Or what I did, I marked this one even, the Krylon. See if that's any different, any better, whatever. We got enough material to work with here. That's the Krylon Crystal Clear. Once that dries, I'm going to go through the whole test thing again and try this again. You would think this would be a lot simpler, and we've been back and forth on the phone with Rich and Dave all day trying to resolve this. Now you can see that the dope is actually attacking the film, the edge, or whatever you want to call it. It's just, that's totally incompatible. So that's not going to be one of our choices. And the Krylon's doing exactly the same thing. All the just turning it into what amounts to be I don't know, some kind of chemical reaction to that. So we're going to abandon that for the time being too. In fact, we really have to, one of the things we learned here, we're going to have to use, we can't use the paper that Dave used. We're going to have to resort to using Richard's paper and then coming up with a better way of sealing this, as of right now anyway. Now you might not realize it, but we have spent the better part of 3 or 4 days here. Testing, trying things, finding out that certain things absolutely are not working, and we're not sure at this point in time if that's the paper Elliot sent or special paper. Again, it was a mistake on my part. This is not the paper they used, and I'm going to get more information from Dave about that. But what we're going to try to do in the week or so that comes right after this is we're going to try, we know we can do this. We know we can always put the blue letters on top. That's no problem at all. I mean, black letters on top of anything. Where you have colors, you always have to account for, with Dave's paper, to bleed through. We know with Richard's paper, the laser paper, we know 2 layers will make us white, and one layer will work over silver, and we know 2 layers will work over red. But we still haven't decided, and we know 2 layers of yellow will work. We still haven't made what I call final decisions, and I'm glad the wing is still up there in silver, because one of the decisions we may make is just to back mask it off. The advantage would be that we have it already in silver, and that Testarossa lettering, and we could use, well, pretty much the pattern that we have, or we could just freehand it out. That wouldn't even be a problem. Freehanding this wouldn't be that difficult. It's a very simple pattern, and it just has curves, so that's not a real issue. But it's nice to have all these choices, and it's nice to know. What's really nice to know is what doesn't work. In this case, so far, the one thing that we haven't figured out a good way to make work is the laser paper. So I'm sorry, I'm back. I'm thinking decals on the brain here. The laser paper is the one that we had a problem with. The inkjet is the one. Now, I don't know why I wrote laser. Inkjet is the one that was working for Rich. But we're gonna be gathering more data on this, and I still think it's fun. Now, see, it would be fun if this was the first one you ever did. You'd be up here, and the Krylon's melting this, and the dope is melting this, and this would be a real issue to deal with. But anyway, that's it. That's it. We'll make some phone calls tonight. And as we always do with any of our projects, try to draw on the best minds in the industry, Dave Midgley and Rich Oliver. Now the next step, while we're waiting to make some decisions on these decals and back masking and talk to Rich and Dave some more, it's time. Every year we get to the same point in time, and I need to find at least one pen that writes. So what I'm going to do, go over to the sink. Well, we have pens within pens within pens here. Anyway, we need to get at least 1 or 2 ink pens. There's not going to be a lot of ink on this. I need to make sure I have some of the correct ink, and I think I do. I see we have some of that, no problem. But it's time. Take the pens all apart, let them soak in Windex, or what I call pen cleaner. It's really just Windex. Take the couple that we're going to use, let them soak, let them get cleaned. This is something I like to do a day or 2 before I'm going to use them. Now, I'm not going to use these today, but if I let them soak overnight, there's a real good chance I'll get 1 or 2 of them to still write. Now, when we used to, Bob Martens used to live not too far away from here. He used to take these pens and he had some kind of a cleaning because he's a professional draftsman. But right now we just want to get 1 or 2 of these working. And usually, if I'm really lucky, from all of these pens, I get to make 1 or 2 that write real well. And the reason I want to do is I want to, either tomorrow or the next day, we're supposed to have some painting weather in the next couple days, ink up maybe 1 stab, 1 elevator, or maybe the whole tail or a flap, and then put some clear on it to see how this color is going to look once it has the clear on it, because this is really a special color. Now you can always tell when you take the pens apart, even though they've been cleaned, the soaking them in Windex, the little ball check valve isn't moving. Even in these, they look pretty clean. There's no substitute for just taking them all apart and let them soak in Windex overnight or so. And by tomorrow, these pens will be soaking. Look at this Windex. It turns the Windex into sloppy stuff. Anyway, some of these have had white ink in them, some black ink. I find you got to really, at least I do, what I've done in the past, I've taken these apart when I'm done with them, cleaned them, put them away, and the day I go to use them, I got to clean them again. So it's almost like, well, we'll get 2 or 3 pens, 2 or 3 different thickness lines. The most important part is to clean the tip up here. This has to all come apart, and you pull a pin out. It's the pin in here that gets stuck, but first step one is once you pull them apart, just let them sit overnight. And you can run them through hot water. That usually gets them going a little bit anyway. We'll come back to that tomorrow. Oh, finally got all the masking tape off of this guy. It's the black edges, and maybe that even worked to our favor, that the edges are now a little darker than they were before. And we'll see what our friend John Cafaro has to say. If we've lived up to his expectations or not. But to me, that's a pretty nice fuselage. Pretty nice. And in another couple of days, we're going to have to resolve this lettering thing, or we're going to have to buy some masking tape or figure out what decals we want to use. But boy, we have really spent a lot of time and energy resolving that. But I hope we're going to come up with an answer and a formula that'll work for everybody somewhere down the road. Now what's going to happen while I'm waiting for our different options on the decals, between Elliot and Dave and Rich Oliver, everybody's been adding some feedback into this, and we're going to make a final decision. But today I thought one of the things I could do, since I have the tail done, there won't be any decals on the tail, I could lay out the ink work on the tail just as a way to fill in some time while I'm waiting for these decal issues to be resolved. The more I look at the canopy, the more I like it. We got some nice emails from John Cafaro today. He finally got to see this in where it is right now in red. But just a couple of thoughts on laying out ink work here. And I won't do any of the ink right here, but I want to lay out some of the ideas, some of the things, and then probably if we have time tomorrow, we'll do some more ink work. Now this is where a lot of people, in my opinion, could get more efficient. We're at a point in time now where we can't really work on the wing until we make a final decision on the lettering. And John Pothier was going to downsize the letters to 2 inches so I could start working with that. Elliot was going to do something similar to that. He was going to lay out decals for me, these little things 1 inch high. But in the meantime, you see, a lot of people would be right now, they'd be at a quagmire and say, well, I can't, you know, I'm done. Well, no, you're not. And in our case, what I'm going to do is start looking at how I want to lay out the ink line on the tail. So it is always a good way to do it. Look at previous planes that people have built, you've built, and get some idea. You know, look at some of the ink line videos and get some ideas how you'd like to do the various layout of the lettering. Now I have developed over the years a little style of how I like to lay on the lettering, and it's really not that complicated. And the tails all seem to be very similar, either combinations of rivet lines. In this case I got rivets, lines, but on this plane I'd like to minimize rivets and make the lines the dominant feature. The trim tabs is always, well, again, having some pictures, always a big help. In this case I can go right up to the Spitfire. I can go up to the Spitfire bedroom and check out some of them. See, these were done with all rivets. Again, I've got a lot of choices. I want to lay out, well, Miss Ashley's a little bit different. Miss Ashley's all rivets. And the method, once I decide what that ink line work should look like, the way I go about laying it out is laying it out in, kind of in tape first. Ink the bottom, these are just the general rules. Ink the bottom before the top, just to get a view if you really like it. If you have trouble with ink sticking, in this case we don't know if we will or not, rub the surface with talcum powder and just leave the last little bit on, because it goes away when you spray it with clear. It just disappears. But the thing Les was trying to come up with in terms of the ink line job, we wanted to keep this simple. We didn't want to turn this into gewgaws and start hanging Christmas tree ornaments on it, because I feel the beauty of the model, the thing that sets it apart, is the curves, the shapes, the curves, and when they're all buffed out, I think they're going to really stand out in a crowd, as opposed to a plane that's just full of stars and stripes and metal flake and lines going back and forth, where it's to some people's taste, it would be overdone. So step one here on my tail, and this is really the only part I can do today, is I need to lay out in tape where the fuselage actually would go, because I need to end those ink lines pretty near that. I don't want ink lines going under the take apart features, and some do and some don't. So masking off where these things end with tape, and then I want to connect any line I have on a stab. I want to connect to the elevators, and out of all those pens I've got one, a .60 that I want to start using and start seeing if that width ink line is going to be what I want to use on the plane. Now I know I don't want to have any ink lines going past that point, and I'll put that tape, that's my boundary layer, on both sides of the stab and elevator to start with, and then I'll outline my boxes that I want to lay the outlines in. Maybe lay out some kind of a spar. Now I know if you want, you can get all kind of templates. Brodak has some special ones that have the rivets already in them and gas caps and stuff, but generally drafting templates are what I use. Now in this case, just before I even started, wipe everything down, kind of sand it with talcum powder. Again, that is one of the best tips. I believe it was Frank McMillan that first introduced me to that idea, and it worked great. And I always have a pad around. And what I'm doing with this pen, wrong pen. Always before I start a line, if the pen isn't really working the way I want, and be sure to use the ink that says for acetate or film, not paper ink. Just some common tips that, well, the rulers or things all have to have some way of raising them up off the part. A couple layers of tape just set back, let's see, like 1/8 of an inch. Now what that allows you to do, it just keeps the edge of this from the ink running in and smearing it. And because we're near the end of this tape, I was hoping I'd get some of this inking done, but we're going to pick this up on the next tape. It looks like our decal thing went into limbo land. But there's a lot of choices, and without all those experiments, I think we would have possibly made a catastrophe out of that. But thanks to hashing it back and forth, and thanks to Dave and Rich and Elliot, John Pothier, all the people that are adding into this, is going to give us in the next week or so some real good choices. Another thing too, these old latex gloves, great if you tend to sweat. And in the old days, when my hands from working in a machine shop, it'd be just solid grease at the end of the day, what would happen is it was almost impossible to ink. And then Frank gave me that idea of the talcum powder. That helped, but the rubber gloves and the talcum powder make it really easy. Now when you're laying out an ink job, it's a good idea to just look at some old books, magazines, and see how a real airplane similar to the one you're making comes apart. And where people, I think, get ink lines wrong is they turn it into a drafting table, and they go get an architectural template and start putting couches, and I don't know, you know, I try to look at how does a real airplane come apart, especially in the nose when we get to do the fuse. Now one of my favorite ink line jobs is on the Seafire. So when I looked at it, I said, what about it that I like? Well, yeah, I really did like the simulated spar. So that was a good way to pick it up, and I don't know what we're going to pick up off the wing, but just as an example, Al Raby always has something very scale. Well, of course the model's a scale, but even if you had a non-scale plane, you'd try to get it to look similar to that, or in a way that would make sense. Try to picture taking a plane apart or building it. And if you're doing a scale plane, and Les helped me with all of the twins, just get the drawings of the scale plane. That's the best way I know of to do it. Now the idea was here, I wanted to simulate something similar to the way the Seafire is. Well, the nice thing about doing any of these ink things, notice I would always suggest this, always do the bottom first. Good tip. Lay it out in tape. Rub the tape on your shirt. Don't let it be sticky, because the tape doesn't have to be real accurate here. I always go get close to the tape, but don't touch it. And always get whatever rulers or tools, 3-4 layers of masking tape up off the table before you, once that ink runs under there, it's a mess. Now you get a mess, Windex, a little puddle of Windex, sometimes water, sometimes Q-tips, depending on how long you let it sit there, but you can virtually always get the ink off. So if I was to be totally sick of this and I said, oh gee, I don't like that at all, well, I can wipe it right off and start again. Another thing too, if you can still buy M600 or Sikkens, it's a good idea, of course, to clean the parts, but they're rubber gloves. They're the thing that really makes it practical, that you don't have the frustrating things that have happened to me over the years. And ink lining is not my favorite part of the job, but I think I've gotten better at it each year. And I think having Les's help, well, he's not here today, but his input on this has made it really just a little more fun than it would be if I sat here alone. And always looking at, even if you save pictures in an album of different things that you like, instead of just, you know, just making it look crazy. In other words, on a real airplane there would have to be ribs. Well, the ribs on a typical plane might be riveted in. That's just one way of, the fuselage would have formers. It wouldn't have couches and couch potatoes and things that I've seen on, that people just pick out of their mind, random hatches everywhere. This would be not an exactly scale job, but similar to how a real aircraft would come apart. Usually in the front, almost all World War II planes had Zeus fittings. So you've got a lot of